we talked about a few ideas, and this was the idea that we landed on based off a conversation that I've had with several recruiters over the past couple of weeks. And so we are going to talk today about breaking the cycle, educating and empowering recruiters to navigate cultural challenges. So we're addressing difficult leadership dynamics and how to handle it. And my idea for today is that you guys are going to help me teach this. So I'm super excited about this. Daniel is going to be in the chat. So he's definitely going to be jumping in and chiming in with ideas that you guys have, with advice that you have. Because at the end, I want to hear from you. Like, what would you tell us to do? How should we handle this? And then also hear your experiences. Today's presentation is not going to end today. It's going to be a continued conversation that we continue to have. So I hope you guys will connect with me if you're not already connected. And of course, I'm pretty sure that you're going to see this continue throughout the presentations with Hire Easy as we move forward. So let's just jump in. So I'm going to start with the situation first. Give me just a second. Here we go. All right, so I had a recruiter. She shared with me a struggle that she was having. It was a pretty serious issue culturally. She had a difficult hiring manager. And if you've ever hired, if you've been in recruiting for 1 day, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you have probably had your struggle or your challenge with a hiring leader when it comes to recruiting for their team. Well, in this particular situation, this recruiter said it's not just recruiting, Kai. That's not the problem. It is actually after the person starts the team and they start working with this particular leader, it's almost like a bullying that kind of takes place. And so she said, I really want some advice on how to handle this. She said in the role that she's recruiting for, there's only 2 or 3 team members who have this particular role that supports this particular leader. And she said, Kai, it's almost like a revolving door. I can almost time it. 60 days in, that person is going to be in and out. They're going to start the position, and then suddenly they're going to be back out again. And so she said, there's this frustration because I can count every 60 days, I will be hiring for this same position over and over again. She said, it's almost like the leader's mindset is that this bullying I'm doing is part of an initiation. And I feel like if the candidate really wants the role, really wants this job, wants to be a part of this company, wants to grow, then they have to prove themselves. So you got a short amount of time to prove to me that you can do this job. And how I get you to prove yourself is almost like an attack. That's the way this recruiter put it. It's almost like an attack mentality. So the recruiter felt that when candidates would ask her, tell me about the culture. What is the team dynamics like? Tell me about this leader. She felt like she had to be dishonest. Like, I can't tell you who this leader really is. I can't tell you why we keep posting this job every 60 days. I can't tell you about the issues that we're encountering. I can't tell you any of that. I kind of got to put icing on this cake and put it in a nice, pretty box and wrap it up. She also began to tell me, Kai, I kind of feel frustrated because when I have an individual who has a job and they're leaving that job to come into this role, she was like, I know in the back of my head, this isn't going to work for long. And she said, I found myself with this last person talking them out of the role. And she said that was an issue for the candidate. It was also an issue for me, and it was an issue for my leader. Now, on the other side, she said, my leader is phenomenal. The company as a whole is a great company. It's just this one individual leader. So, you guys, she asked me, how do I handle this? Like, what do I do? How do I approach this? What should I say? How do I encourage? How do I have these conversations? And especially, Pat, when I'm a new recruiter. I've only been in recruiting for a year. So this leader doesn't feel like I have the expertise to really talk to her about this situation or these issues. How do I even begin to approach this situation? So you guys, today, you guys are going to teach this young recruiter, and I'm so excited for it. So to start with, let's just talk about the implications of cultural challenges. First of all, it impacts your turnover rate. It impacts the cohesion of the team and the overall productivity of that team. So those are some of the issues that we see when we have a challenging leader or a challenging culture. It starts to create, as she said, that revolving door where we are hiring for this role over and over and over again. The ongoing hiring efforts lead to increased costs and strain on resources. It leads to a poor candidate experience. If you're a candidate, you're in the interview process, I extend the offer to this particular candidate, she gets hired, and then 30 days later, I'm contacting you going, hey, we have another opening. Would you be interested in this position? And that may be okay for the first couple of rounds, but what happens over time when candidates are, it starts to show up on LinkedIn or on job boards every few weeks. We're seeing this job post pop up. People start asking questions, and I have had that happen because I've been on the other side of this. And then also, it creates recruiters may encounter ethical dilemmas when promoting a position, which is what this recruiter said. Ethically, I have some issues here. When I feel like I have to lie to candidates and tell them the culture is one thing within this team dynamic, or this leader is one type of leader that they're looking for, when it may not be the case. Daniel, anything to add to that? Have you seen this before?
I think it happens a lot, and it's not talked about because sometimes the recruiter doesn't have the confidence to direct change from the recruiting chair. And I'm excited to see what you have to say and what the community in the chat has to say about this topic and this scenario, because hopefully by the end, it'll give us some confidence as recruiting leaders to be business partners and talent advisors versus order takers.
Oh, I'm so glad you used that specific phrase, order takers, because that's exactly what this candidate or this recruiter said she felt like. She was taking orders. This person, I need a number one with the extra cheese and extra sauce, and I'm gonna go out and find that particular candidate, bring that candidate back, and then I'm going to try to make sure this candidate stays in. And so she had even started on the back end, contacting the candidates after they got in, being that person's champion to speak with them to make sure they stay engaged. And so she got to see it firsthand for herself, some of the things that the candidates were going through. So that kind of changed the dynamic there. But now I want to hear from the audience. Have you guys ever encountered a situation like this? Would you say, yeah, Kai, I see this quite frequently, especially if you're an agency or if you're a high volume recruiter or anything like that, maybe frequently. Maybe occasionally, Kai, every so often I do see it. Would you say rarely? Or would you say never? What do
We
you
got
see?
occasionally, absolutely, occasionally, yes, rarely for one, occasionally, but usually centers around one business group,
Yeah.
occasionally, but definitely have worked at places where it has happened frequently.
Absolutely. You guys, this is something that's not unique. And that's one of the things that I wanted to tell this recruiter. This is not unique to your situation. You may see this in multiple different industries and multiple different companies. It is the thing that we know in recruiting that often gets swept up under the rug. And so we're going to talk about it today. Let's keep going. So I found some interesting statistics that I wanted to share with this group. One of the things that really stood out to me, and I would go in order, but this one thing just really popped out, was when I looked at health implications, especially when we're starting to talk about mental health, when we're starting to talk about work-life balance. A study published by the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found that employees who reported experiencing toxic leadership were 2.3 times more likely to experience psychological distress. That shouldn't be something that's shocking to anybody, because if you worked for one of those type of leaders or you've been up under them or a direct report to these type of leaders, then you understand the mental strain that it takes on that individual. I have talked about a few weeks ago working for a company where this particular leader was such a difficult leader to all of the other leaders in the company that it wasn't until I actually started the organization that I realized that there were other managers. I thought I was the only one in the company outside of this leader. He never introduced me to anyone else. And then also with this company, he would go into we would do a class of 20 new hires every 2 weeks. He would go into the class every 2 weeks and introduce himself by telling the employees, I don't want to know your names. I don't care what your name is. I don't care to know you. Until you put numbers on my sales board, there's nothing I want to know about you. And odds are most of you will not make it past day 3. That was the introduction. So I had to work with this leader to finesse that, because he was also one of those types of leaders who felt like you got to prove yourself. If you can make it past grade 3, then yeah, you have a place here. But if you can't make it past day three, then I don't even want to know you. I don't care who you are. I don't care to know about your family. Don't care where you came from. Don't care where you grew up. Nothing about you is relevant until I start to see numbers. So you guys, let's keep going. Turnover rates. We already talked about this a little bit, but 50% higher than those with positive cultures. For those with negative cultures, your turnover rates are 50% higher. Cost of hire, the average cost of hiring for a new employee is approximately 4,000, and it can increase significantly with high turnover. For companies that have limited budgets, we don't have a lot of money where we can keep hiring people over and over and over again. Unless you figure out how to solve this very critical problem to your business, it is costing your bottom line. You have to go out there and promote the opportunity. It takes man hours for your recruiting team to be able to interview the candidates. Your hiring managers have to interview the candidates. Then you have to worry about onboarding and benefits. You've got unemployment. There's all types of expenses that go into this. So the average cost is approximately, yours could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, but approximately about $4,000. Candidate experience, that is something that we have been talking about a lot over the past few years and really diving into. 70% of candidates report that the quality of the interview process heavily influences their decision to accept a job or not. So if the interview process is kind of stop and go, it's kind of crazy, more than likely you'll have candidates who will walk away from the process. I actually saw a post about that this morning where someone said this person was a professional and they had applied to several part-time jobs at local retailers. And they said most of the retailers didn't even get back to the person. One retailer told them that they were not a fit for the role, which was a cashier role, and then contacted the person back later and said, hey, if you go to a different store, maybe we can consider you. The gentleman said, yes, I'll go to a different store. I'll go to a different location, and got an offer letter within 24 hours. He never spoke with anybody, never met with anybody, was never interviewed by anybody, and didn't really understand what he was supposed to do on day one. I think that if you that process is choppy, and of course we know he did not show up for that job because it was too rocky for him in the interview process. You know, candidates, it's not a smooth process, it's not well thought out. And of course, if it's choppy where I have to find emails from you or I have to find communication from you, most candidates will walk away. Now, I will say in this current climate, maybe a little bit more sympathetic the candidates will be for a choppier process, but not always. So keep that in mind. And then with employee engagement, companies with engaged employees perform 202% better than those without, emphasizing the importance of supportive leadership. When you have a supportive leader who backs you up, who goes to bat for you, who's encouraging your growth and development, you feel more apt to dig in. You will give a little bit more. You'll be more committed to the organization, to the team, when you have that type of leader. Now, we know the opposite happens with toxic leadership. Let's keep going, because now we're going to get to the part where you guys teach. So, teachable moment. Let's dig in. Imagine the recruiter facing this challenge came to you and asked for your advice on how to approach this issue. So the recruiter is asking you, what would you do? How would you do it? What advice or strategies would you suggest to navigate the difficulties with the hiring manager? Let's hear from the group. What do you
Throw in the
have?
chat room. If you have any ideas, throw it in there. I'd love to hear from the chat.
Absolutely. From communication, from just resources that you would give to this recruiter, because this recruiter is a new recruiter 1 year in, and really this is her first recruiting role. What would you advise her to do?
I think one of the things too is I think we miss as recruiters is how many touch points do we have with the candidate throughout the process of interviewing them. Typically on a hire, it takes anywhere between 8 to 15 touch points from first interaction to final offer. But once they accept that offer and they start, how many times are we reaching back out to those individuals, maybe after day one, day 7 days after, a month, 3 months, and really build a relationship? You've talked to this individual for the last month, month and a half throughout the recruiting process. And then once they start and they're actually your coworkers and you're working with them, you don't touch them or you don't talk to them. The
at
best
all.
people that get referral generated leads are the people that don't stop once that offer is accepted. They still engage and build relationships with the candidates that just got hired. So I think that would be my recommendation from the recruiter standpoint because they'll get the information and the feedback from the candidate as the process and the onboarding is going. But I'd love to hear from the audience. Let me read some of the comments for you.
Okay.
One said, provide information with data, um, bring it up to TA leadership, listen and connect, ask the manager, what are your challenges in filling the role, and what are the top three skill sets. Data and regular check-ins made a lot of difference, people said.
Oh
Data,
yeah.
paint the picture to the hiring team and talk to the HRBP. So maybe incorporating the HRBP involved and figure out identifying the situation.
Oh, yeah, I think those are all great points. And I think the data does speak to the issues that you may have. And it does help paint a better picture of what you're encountering with this particular team. So let's keep going. Next question. For those of you who dealt with this situation or a similar one, would you say you handled the problem the correct way? And is there anything that you would do differently? While you guys are putting your message in, I'm going to talk a little bit about the situation I encountered. The first time I encountered it, when I talked about the leader earlier, I would say I didn't handle that situation the best way. I think I was new to recruiting. I was new to the situation. I had never seen anything like that with that specific type of leadership style. And so I just didn't know how to handle this, how to navigate these relationships. And I wasn't really secure enough to feel like I could have some of those difficult conversations. There was not a particular leader in the organization that I could go to ask for advice because the other two leaders that were in the organization with me said to me, I don't even talk to him. I stay in my office all day long. I never come out. And I feel bad for you that you have to interact with him. And so it was very challenging in the beginning to help him see one, the impact on the employee morale when you come in and you introduce yourself by saying, I don't want to know your name. And I mean, he would literally walk into the room and go, hey, what's your name? And when the person was getting ready to say their name, he would go, no, I don't want to know it. Like cut you off in the middle of speaking. And so I was like, oh, we can't do that. And when I would talk to him about employee morale, he would always say, that's fluff stuff. Nobody really cares about that. All employees want to know is do they get paid on Friday? They don't care how I treat them. They don't care how I talk to them. They don't care about any of this. His popular meeting that he had recorded was called the FU meeting, where he cussed out every member of the sales floor for 45 minutes straight. That was literally something that he recorded and he bragged about it and he would play it for new team members coming in. I want you to hear this type of talk and I want you to hear this is how I'm going to talk to you because I'm trying to build you up so that when you get on the sales floor and you're on a call with an angry customer, you're not intimidated by that conversation with that customer. So this was his way of doing that. And he couldn't understand why we were losing so many people so quickly. So in the beginning, no, I didn't handle it the right way. As a matter of fact, I was like, I'm going to help you build as quickly as I can, but I'm out of here. Like, I'm not going to help you change anything because this is a bit much, and I didn't know how to even approach it. The next time that I saw a situation like this, definitely approached it differently. And on the next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I implemented because I learned from it the first time. And so when I encountered it again, I was prepared for it this time. I was like, okay, now we know how not to do this. Let's talk about how we do it. So from the audience, your learning experience. Would you say you did it right the first time? And is there anything that you learned that you would do differently? Anything that you're saying?
I mean, for me, I would say surround the people that have your back and the leadership that has your back, whether it's the HRBP or your TA leader, and understand that we're problem solvers as a TA function. However, there's some information and support that you need that you can't do yourself sometimes. So leverage some of the cross-functional partners to understand the situation because it might be a bigger situation that's stemming from the top down or just a culture in general that needs to be brought up for continued growth in the conversation and the organization's growth.
Very good. So I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to wrap this up. First of all, I recommended, and what I did the second time around was conducted feedback sessions. So this was not only where I would gather feedback from the hiring manager or that particular leader, but I would gather feedback from cross-functional partners who work with that team member, as well as the candidates in the team that this person was joining, just to see kind of how this person acclimated in. Was there anything that we could take back that we can do differently in the interview process? Asking the candidate, what did you feel about the interview process? Was there anything from your point of view that we can change? And then working with that particular leader to support them as they manage or lead that particular candidate. The next thing we talked about was engagement with leadership. So this is where we brought in different leaders to address cultural feedback and encourage openness about challenges. And sometimes it could be just a leader in this particular case. The leader wasn't sure how to get the results that I need at the end. So I'm thinking this is the best way to do that. And they were doing it with the wrong mindset. So we had to go in and discuss other things that they could try that could possibly help them with getting those results. And then discussing how do we build actionable items from here. We also created a training and development program, and this was to help advocate leaders to be focused on communication, teamwork, and emotional intelligence. And so this was when someone joined the organization, if you were someone coming in going, hey, eventually I want to be a people leader, we automatically enrolled you into this program. What we noticed were people were being promoted into a leader role without the educational support on how to be a people leader. They weren't trained, and it was really based on skill sets. If you are great at your job, so now I want to make you manager or leader over several individuals without giving you the skills on how to manage, the people who would be reporting to you. And so we created a program that was day one. And it was preparing you to move eventually into leadership. It didn't mean that you were going to do it day 7. But eventually, when you got there, you had some foundation and some building blocks that you can build off of with continuing engagement in education, even after that point. So as I come into a leadership role, I have this team who I now support. There are dynamics or issues that I'm not sure how to address or how to fix. Well, you're still in a peer group with other leaders where you can talk about those issues, and then we can all learn from each other in order to continue the education and continue the support of our team. Collaboration, we involved HR. Come on in here, HR, make sure we're doing this right. And so HR was a critical part for us as we continue the building program. And then last, we created the support network and form a network of recruiters to share experiences and strategies for navigating similar challenges. So when we had new recruiters coming in who weren't quite sure, maybe you hadn't had that situation yet, we wanted to prep you for, okay, when you see this, here are the action items that you are to take in order to navigate that relationship with that leader and really be able to support their team. And sometimes it was really just about fear, or I don't think you're going to be able to handle, the candidates that I need. So it can be any number of those issues. But here are a few of the action items that we did in order to support the teams that we partnered with. So last, that is all that I have for you guys today. If we are not connected, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I look forward to talking to you guys some more and continue supporting you. Thanks, guys.